welcome back to part 18. So we're going to work on the spoked part of the hub again. I want to start off by kind of correcting myself here. I put out detail cerulean last time, cerulean blue, so that was the blue that I wanted to use. It's actually this one, cobalt blue, which is, I want to say 0060 or 066. I can double check that. But cobalt blue is the more violet blue. Cerulean still has a lot of green in it. It's not going to matter for the stuff I did there, but I just wanted to make a quick correction there. In case you go and grab the cerulean blue, which is this one, which is 062. This is a greenish blue when you mix it out. And I noticed that when I put it on the palette, 'cause the cap is all gummed up, I couldn't get the paint out, so I just grabbed it off the cover. And in the cover, you can see that kind of purpley cast to it, but it doesn't have that. When you spread it out, it turns very green, tropical almost. So just a quick correction there. All right, so I've got the correct blue out now. Again, like I said, it's not going to make a huge difference in the long run, but I figured I would mention that because it's important. Okay. So part 18, that means we're into the 9th hour on this painting, and we've got just this part done, or close to done. Again, it's a testament to what really goes into one of these paintings, which again, I'll say it over and over again. I love it. This is why I paint, for paintings like this. And ultimately, I hope that when my story's done, that these are the paintings that are gonna kind of be around. Certainly, I mean, those black and white 543s have been a blast. They have been an absolute joy to do, and they're a lot of fun, and we've built up this great community of people who suggest them, and so that's its own thing. But as far as the end of the day, academically, what I've left behind, these paintings are what I'm really hoping will be the focus. All right. So just like last episode, what I'm doing is I'm using this really dark slate blue to sharpen up all the edges along the spokes. Things that the airbrush, has a harder time doing, meaning getting in there tight and putting in a real nice edge. The other thing, I've lost a few of the details, like the spokes that come in on this side kind of wrap in, and then there's almost like a rivet head on the other side, and I've missed a bunch of those on this side. They've kind of gotten sucked into the mix, so to speak, so I gotta pull those back out, which I will do either with a little bit of scratching or some white, probably some white. The pressure valve in my old Hammerhead compressor is acting weird. You'll hear it in a second. Now, the compressor's running right now, it's a silent compressor, so you don't hear it until it does that. So normally that little outgassing is quiet, but something's going on with it. Now that compressor is old. I think I got it in 1990. My dad actually got that for me, which was amazing because I was using a small Pache D compressor, which is a little tank, not air tank. It had no tank. It was a crazy compressor. I still have it. It's an old diaphragm compressor. Might even still work. I don't know. But it was one of those real tiny compressors, and we put a tank on it. We kind of used some plumbing stuff and attached a tank to it to kind of cool off some of the air, because what it would do is it would, like all small compressors, it would heat up the air so much that after about 10 minutes of spraying, it would start spitting water everywhere, which is the downfall of those small compressors. They're nice because they're inexpensive and they're tough, but they do not like to be run for long periods of time. It's like they say they should be off as much as they are on, but I would say it's more like 2 to 1. It should be off twice as much as it's on to have it really not do that, even with moisture traps and things. So, okay, so again, I'm get that real dark blue, and I'm just kind of cutting in those edges. I'm putting in a little bit of texture here too. So it might look a little bit rough right now, but what's going to happen is just like this part down here, as I shade and put all the airbrushing on it, it's going to come together really, really nicely. I sprayed this part here brown, and it shouldn't be. So I'm going to go over with not a hair, sticking in there. I'm going to go over a lot of this brown with this slate blue, just kind of knock it away, because it shouldn't be there. I should have done this in like that blue color. So I might have just missed it and misinterpreted or whatever. So we're going to correct that right now. Because for whatever reason, I know it's the composition of the metal that makes up this part. It just oxidizes differently than the other parts. It has a blue cast to it rather than the brown cast of everything else. In fact, this whole area has texture, so I'm just going to fill it in and then fade it after. That way I kind of kill two birds with one stone. I've changed the value. Needed to darken that anyway, but now when I go over that with the airbrush, I have the edge in, I have a lot of texture already built in. The texture kind of creeps down onto this part too, so we'll do that too, and that'll be incorporated again when I fade that. It'll include that, which will be nice. I'm not going to brighten up. These spokes have like bright highlights on them. I'm not going to do that yet. I'm going to do the airbrushing first. So if there's overspray, I can always just take it out. So I'll continue that pattern across the rest of the hub. Yeah, I'm going to just paint this in. So this, I'm just going to put a line here. I was going to do this with the texture, just kind of stipple along to make that edge, but I need to have that read continuously all around this circle, this oval. So I'm going to set the line first, and then I'll throw the texture in. There we go. So then I sit back a little bit, make sure this line that I just painted in it matches, it's concentric to these other ones. So one of the things that happens a lot, especially with a really intense, like detailed type painting, it's easy for me to get lost in the details, meaning kind of get lost in the trees and miss the forest. This line right here is a perfect example of that. So if I'm really dealing with the minutia of that texture and I'm really just concentrating on that, I could miss the fact that this arced line not only goes all the way around up here, but it also is a perfect oval to the bottom side of it down here. So this has to read like an oval first and then all the texture. So if I do the texture first, there's a good chance that I won't be paying attention to that overall shape of that oval, and that it'll just be, it won't be right. It'll be crooked or bent or messed up or whatever. So now I can concentrate on that texture that shows in this shadowed area. And this was already painted. I already hit this once, so when I go back to do this again, if I even have to, it's pretty much all set. So there's that spoke that I did on the last episode, so that's good. The top of that needs to be done. Here's the other side of that hub. So it's the same thing, this little arced line that kind of goes behind the spokes needs to match this arc here. And there's so much stuff going on with the spokes woven in and out of there. It's really, really easy to miss that, and then sit back at the end and say, oh, that looks like it was in an accident or something. So it just barely pops out here, but these two are the one I want, especially this one, because this really matches that curve right there. And again, I'm ignoring the spokes because they're really the last thing to go on after I do the hub, because they're on top. So I think, just like the whole painting, I think back to front, background to foreground. So right now this hub is behind the spokes, so I'm taking care of all that first. And then I'll do the spokes because they're on top. It'll be easier. Obviously, if I paint the spokes first, Then I have to find some way to mask them off so they don't get paint on them when I do the backside, you know, underneath it. Okay, so that's good. Got that. Can't really see that one, or can you? Yeah, actually you can. Over here, a little bit more, the brush is drying out. And then you need to set that top edge too, where the other side, where the axle comes through essentially, the rest of the hub. So again, there's spokes on here too, so I'm just going to kind of do the best I can to avoid them, but if I get paint on them, it's not a big deal, because I'm going to be painting the spokes in anyway. A little bit of damage there too. Yep. Okay, so this comes around like this, and then the spoke finishes it up. So there we go. There's a lot of brown on this. I use that really dark brown to do this little section right here. The fact that I'm using the blue over that right now doesn't really affect it very much, because this is almost at saturation. So the blue that I'm putting on here, while it's darker, a little bit darker than what's on there, it's transparent enough that it doesn't really affect that brown, because that upright is kind of brown colored. So we're going to leave it at that. And then there's a spoke that comes through there, so that's all set. So I think I'm ready for airbrushing on this. Actually, no, I'm going to do, so in the last episode, I did the dark texture and then I did the light texture. No, you know what, I may need to get some airbrushing on this first. This light blue that I kind of dusted in here originally is too light. If it was closer to the actual color that I was shooting for, I could do the light texture and do the shading and be done, just like I was down here. But this blue is too light. So I got to kind of adjust that. So I've got black in here, so I'm going to add a touch of that blue, the cobalt blue. So I just put a little bit of blue on the end of this mixing brush and mix it with the black that's in there. And then I'm going to take a tiny bit of white, just a drop of white. And that's reduced too. The white is reduced 1:1, so that will give me this same kind of slate blue color. It might not be light enough. No, I'm going to hit it one more time with another drop of white. Again, that white that I'm mixing in is already reduced. It's 1:1. It's 1 part paint to 1 part reducer. So I'm essentially adding reducer in here too. That's giving me more what I'm looking for. So that's like a lighter slate gray color. That's going to catch this area up before I put the white texture in it, or light texture. There's black in the end of the brush here, so there's black from here to here because I just used this for black. So I'm just going to put the cloth over the end and then pull the trigger back very slowly. If you pull it back fast, you're going to need a face full of paint. So pull it back real slow, and it pushes air back into the cup and allows that to mix all together. So should be good now. Alrighty then. So what this is going to do is this is going to darken the area that I just put in, or that I was working on. But I got to be kind of careful not to bring it into the really dark areas here, because this has white in it, opaque white, and it will cover. So it's going to make the dark areas look kind of chalky. So I got to be careful, like especially not to get it down on this part that I'm finished with the brown area, because then that would I'd have to go back in with the brown and fix it. So I don't want to get it down there. So I'm just going to be kind of careful with it, especially as I get down close to there. It needs to be there. I mean, it really does. But again, I don't want to have to repaint the stuff I just painted. Now this does have that nice sky blue base that I put on originally way back. So as long as I keep this relatively transparent, I can take advantage of that blue that's already on there. And that's the beauty of that underpainting. It really helps, it really helps kind of set everything in so that you don't have to, like I would have to start from scratch and be working on like a brilliant white here. I've got a lot of blue on there now, which is nice. This, on the last episode, I just kind of ghosted in that line for that shadow there. So then I can go back in with the airbrush and just kind of finish it up, make it look more like a shadow. There was a nice shadow that kind of crosses here where this strut is too, so I can kind of start to drop that in as well. And everything down here is that slate blue. So again, I want to be real careful, and I'm spraying away from, like at an angle away from that darker brown area here. So and I could just grab a freehand shield to block that off as well, but this brush works with paint so well that as long as I angle it away, I'm really not going to get a whole bunch of overspray on this. And I'll be actually using black on this, the rest of this hub anyway, so I can clean that up if something happens in this area. But again, it's, I don't mind spending all the time on this. I just don't want to keep going over the same area because I'm careless. That's not a real good, efficient use of time. There we go. That looks good. Now, this area down here, right at the bottom, the bottom side of the wheel well, I have it it's kind of a warmish brown. This has a lot of that blue to it as well. So I'm gonna kind of incorporate that in this small section as well. These are these final adjustments are the most fun, because this was when you kind of set back from the reference photo and kind of go back and forth and look back and forth real quick and say, okay, what does the photo look like that my painting doesn't? And sometimes it's super subtle and you have to really like sit there and stare at it for a minute and go back and forth until you pick it up. That little blue shift right there is exactly what I'm talking about. I might have seen that as brown originally, but it really is more that steel blue color. So, and those adjustments happen all the time throughout the entire painting, all the way through. And that's again, that's the fun of it for me. That is what makes doing any of these paintings worth doing. It's the joy of understanding the story that was put out in front of you, and that this bike was a story. So, all right, so there we go. So we're in good shape now. I'm feeling good about the texture that I can still see here. I don't have to redo that, but now I'm at the point where I can do the lighter texture. And it's done the same way as I did on the brown. I'm going to actually mix up, I'm going to add a little bit of white to the palette of that slate color that I did all this in the first place. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick some edges and pick some areas, and that's where this color is going to go in. Again, I'm going to shade on top of this, so it's if I put too much of it on here, it's not terrible, you know what I mean? Because I'm gonna be shading on top of it anyway, so I can tone it all back down. But there is a nice highlight in the corner of this. This has like a 90-degree bevel in it, so there's a nice highlight in the middle of that. So I want to reclaim that. The texture shows best on the brighter parts of it, the parts that are in the light. So I get a lot of that. I can start to reclaim those. I'm going to call them rivet heads, but the other side of the spoke where they're kind of show through. So these come in this way. The other ones come in the other way and have that rivet head. So that's what we're seeing there. Lighten that up a little bit because that wasn't bright enough. And on the other side of that shadow, get some more, and in here too. So, the goal is to have someone look at this who knows this bike and say, oh yeah, those two metals are different. And say, oh yeah, I know that why that's doing that, because this hub is made out of this metal and the struts are made out of this type of metal. So if I get that, I win. I totally win, because I don't know what kind of metals they are. But if I pay enough attention to them and I get the details right, someone who does know is going to say, oh yeah, that looks correct. That's the way it should be. What I did was on this one here, because it's right out in the open, it's much brighter, so I just went and added a little bit more white to that to give it a little bit more punch. All right, that is good. Actually, now I can get these guys down here too. So again, this weird non-rusted, non-corroded nut at the end of this is got some brightness where the light hits that, so I can put that in now because I'm done with this area. And on this strut there are two, again, looks like some sort of stainless something, screws, bolts, and those are in there like that. Perfect. There's some shading on that, but I'll get to that when I airbrush a little bit more. Actually, the other side of these bolts where they come through, they won't have airbrushing on them, but oh no, I haven't done this yet. I was going to put them on here too, but I haven't done this strut yet, so I'm going to leave that. That looks good. Now, since I've done all the dark area in here, there are some neat little bright highlights that are just kind of poking through from on the top of the bolt, or the hub where the metal is worn. So I'll put those in too. That looks good. Anything else I'm missing? Not ready to do the spokes, but that's where one of the spokes is going to be. I think that's good. So now I just hit this with black, and should be in good shape. And I will straighten you guys out. You guys are at about a 45-degree angle to the painting right now, and I do that because I'm in really tight. So if the camera was dead on, you'd be right in the way. So I can't really do it that way. You guys are getting full effect. It's just everything is slightly squished for you right now. At the end of this, before I break, at the end of this video, I'll turn the camera, I'll slide the camera over so you're head on, so you get a better feel for it. All right, so I got to clean that slate blue out that I have in the brush, and I'm just going to put that super crazy reduced 1:20 mix back in this brush, just like I did with the brown. Just want to make sure I get all of this out, this slate blue, because again, I'm going to be using this black to do the darkest areas, and if there's a hint of that slate blue, it'll show. It'll show as like a grayish fog on there. So I want to make sure I clean all of this out before I drop the black in. And again, with the black in here, if I had gotten any paint on the part I just did in the last episode, in here, I can fix that now. But I did pretty good. I didn't really hit that, so. Oh, that's not going to work. There we go. Marvelous. Okay. So what I'm going to do, same thing. I'm going to, as I always do, I test it kind of in a spot that's not going to really affect anything. So this area here is dark, so I'm trying to kind of getting the brush going in this section right here. I could do this off the page too, or off the painting, which would be smarter, but what could go wrong? All right, this needs to be back flushed a little bit. There we go. And sorry about the wobbly camera. So that's something that I'm going to be fixing too. So I have an amazing setup as far as the mounts and everything, but the Visionaire setup that I have works really well, but it's not as stable as it needs to be. So I'm going to add some braces to it, which I will show probably in a Tech Tuesday, just to kind of shore it up so that those micro little shakes don't happen anymore. It's a great system, and it wasn't intended, I don't think, to kind of work in the way that I'm using it. So it's just going to need a couple extra little braces for it, which I'll do when I get a little bit of a break. All right, so the black is used just to kind of float in anywhere that needs to be a touch darker. I just did that little shadow there where the strut kind of comes across. So stuff like that. Oh, it's too much. That's all right. Slow down. All right, there we go. And like in here where it gets really dark. Looks good. I really love working this way. Like I mean, it doesn't always happen. Like sometimes I'll push a whole painting all at once, meaning like I'll do all the block-ins, and I'll do like I could have done all this like chocolatey brown color over the whole painting and then moved on, and then basically do each stage across the entire painting. So do that, you know, that texture stage over the whole painting, then do the darker over the whole, you know. But with this, pushing one section all the way to being finished, I like working like this. I guess it's mentally gratifying, you know, with a painting that's going to be going on for this long. If you see a part that's done, it encourages you or me, and it makes me excited to move on. If I have the whole painting all at one stage and it looks like there's, you know, years left to go on it, it can be a bit discouraging, and tends to have other paintings put in its place. You know, like I'll do other stuff if I don't feel up to. The Island Creek painting was a good example of that. That was a long-term painting. I had that on my bench for a long time. That's the painting of the Winter Creek. It felt like it was never going to be done as I was working on it. And that is a dangerous thing for motivation, you know. But it did get done, and you know what generally happens with paintings like that is as I start to get on the other side of it, like halfway, more than halfway, it's a snowball effect. Then I start to see the progress, and then I get excited, and then I just push it till it's done. But early on, it's always tough. It's always tough. Excellent. All right, so there's the black. I'm feeling really good about that. I feel like this should be a little bit darker right on this blue section here. Get this to spray first, and then just really lightly go over it. All right, I think the next episode is going to see spokes. Yeah, I think we're there. Yep, so let me slide the camera over now so you can see it for the last few minutes. We'll get you set up here so you get the correct view, I guess, you know, the head-on view. Like I said, that angle doesn't change very much. It changes you a little bit, but it doesn't change a whole bunch. But that's what we got so far. And I'm going to actually back you guys up as if you were. So this is where you'd be if you were about casual viewing of this painting. Meaning you're about a foot back. So as you're walking along a gallery wall, you know, and you're looking at the paintings, you're about a foot to 18 inches away from the wall as you're kind of scanning them, especially small works. Big works, obviously, you're, you know, farther back, but small works usually within 12 to 18 inches away as you're kind of glancing through. So this is what you'd see. And again, the idea is for me to have enough power far away with the image, so the overall value and composition and clarity of the image, so you know what it is even though it's small. And then I want to grab you and I want to pull you in so that all you're doing is like your face is mashed to the glass and you're looking at the details. So that's kind of what we got. There we go. So there is your episode. So next episode, I think we're going to start digging into the spokes, and then once that's done, this whole wheel and fender is done. I'll start moving on to the forks and the springs and everything, and yeah, I'll start tracking through the painting. It'll be good. All right, so again and again, thank you so much for clicking that like button. for hitting the bell notification button. The videos here are very regular. They're always on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But still, if I randomly go live, I would love to have you there. So click that bell icon so you can hang out with us. And that's what I got. So for Steve Leahy and Open Studio, I thank you all for hanging out, and I will catch you guys and girls on the next one. Take care.